People say I'm ruthless. I'm not ruthless. I'm doing my job for Manchester United.
Were you afraid of him?
Yeah. Early on in my career, definitely fear.
When we do something bad or we lost some games, he kicked the chairs and he kicked the boots, he kicked everything, the waters, the drink.
Alex Ferguson has revealed the 7 footballers who absolutely hated David Beckham's guts during his time at Manchester United, and what the legendary manager uncovered about the toxic dressing room atmosphere will shock you. This isn't tabloid gossip or Twitter rumours. This comes straight from Ferguson's own autobiography, backed by player testimonies and verified accounts from inside Old Trafford. 7 men, 1 superstar, a fractured collective ready to implode. Beckham arrived as a talented academy lad with a decent right foot and a dream. He left as a global icon, drowning in fame, endorsements, and a celebrity marriage that turned football into a sideshow. But somewhere between the treble glory and the flying boot incident, the dressing room turned cold. His teammates stopped talking. His captain stopped protecting him. His striker stopped respecting him. And Ferguson watched it all unfold, taking notes for the day he would finally pull the trigger. Because in Ferguson's world, no individual is bigger than the club, not even the man with the golden right boot. So who were the 7, and what exactly made them turn cold on the most famous footballer on the planet? If this story has you hooked already, do me a solid and hit that hype button to show some love to this video. It keeps the deep dives coming. Let's start with the least expected name on this list, because his hatred wasn't loud or dramatic. It was silent, surgical, and somehow more brutal because of it. Number 7. Rio Ferdinand. The new guard replacing the old icon. Ferdinand arrived at United in 2002 for a British record fee, stepping into a dressing room that was already cracking at the seams. You would think a big personality like Rio, who loved fashion and had his own media interests, would align with Beckham. Wrong. Ferdinand walked into a power vacuum. Ferguson was aggressively clamping down on outside distractions. Beckham's influence was waning because of his ongoing war with the manager. And Rio, ambitious and sharp, saw an opportunity to step up as the new leader of the defence. The friction was hierarchical. As Beckham's star dimmed under Ferguson's growing frustration, Ferdinand's rose. He witnessed the hairdryer treatments. He saw the boot incident firsthand, and he knew that aligning with Beckham meant aligning with a sinking ship. The resentment wasn't personal, it was strategic. Beckham represented the old hierarchy. Ferdinand represented the future. Number 6. Paul Scholes. The reluctant participant in the Beckham circus. Scholes was everything Beckham wasn't. Quiet, private, focused. He shunned the limelight and viewed football as a job to be done with quiet efficiency. Despite being a close mate and part of the class of '92, Scholes found the media madness surrounding Beckham deeply annoying. Described the attention around the England team, driven almost entirely by the obsession with Beckham, as suffocating. The constant paparazzi presence, the questions about Victoria, the hysteria, it all distracted from the football. For a purist like Scholes, Beckham's lifestyle was an irritation that made the job harder. Scholes remained a loyal friend, was one of the few to console Beckham in the dressing room after the 1998 red card. But his hatred was reserved strictly for the cameras, not the subject of them. He didn't hate Beckham the man, he hated Beckham the brand. Number 5. Diego Simeone. The external antagonist who turned Beckham into the most hated man in England. June 30th, 1998. World Cup, round of 16, England versus Argentina. Simeone clattered into the back of Beckham. It was a heavy challenge, not a red card offence. Beckham, lying face down on the turf, petulantly flicked his leg out, making contact with Simeone's calf. Simeone, a master of football's dark arts, collapsed dramatically. The referee was right there. Red card. Beckham was off. Simeone later admitted he exaggerated the contact to get Beckham sent off. A con job, pure gamesmanship. And it worked. The aftermath was brutal. Beckham became a national pariah overnight. Effigies of him were burned outside pubs. He received death threats. The press tore him apart. But here's the twist. Ferguson used that external hatred to bind Beckham closer to Manchester United. He called Beckham immediately after the red card and said, "Don't worry, son. You are a Manchester United player. We will look after you." Ferguson turned the hatred of Simeone and the English press into fuel. He created a siege mentality at Old Trafford, and the 1998-99 season ended in the treble. Simeone had meant to destroy Beckham. Instead, he accidentally made him unstoppable. Number 4. Andy Cole, the overlooked goalscorer trapped outside the inner circle. Cole was one of the Premier League's most lethal strikers and a key part of the treble success. But despite his goals and his contributions, he has spoken openly about the cliques within the United squad. The class of '92, Beckham, Scholes, the Neville brothers, Butt and Giggs had grown up together. They socialised together. They were fiercely loyal to one another. To an outsider like Cole, this group appeared insular and impenetrable. Cole was a reserved, private individual who let his football do the talking. Beckham was the centre of attention, the media darling, the face of the club. The class of '92 received what other players perceived as preferential treatment or protection from Ferguson. Cole has hinted in interviews that the media focus on Beckham and his mates often overshadowed the contributions of everyone else. He didn't hate Beckham personally. He respected his ability. Beckham's crosses were a primary source of Cole's goals, but Cole was never part of the inner sanctum. He was an outsider looking in. Number 3. Ruud Van Nistelrooy, the tactical incompatibility that sealed Beckham's fate. This one was purely about football. Van Nistelrooy was a penalty box predator of the highest order. His game relied entirely on service. He made sharp, decisive runs into the 6-yard box and expected the ball to arrive instantly. In his first season, this worked reasonably well with Beckham's crossing ability, but by the 2002-03 season, Beckham's game had changed. He began drifting inside more frequently, seeking to influence play from central areas rather than hugging the touchline. He would delay the cross to look for a more precise pass or play a 1-2. For a striker like Van Nistelrooy, who made his runs based on split-second timing, this delay was infuriating. Ferguson's autobiography explicitly states that Van Nistelrooy complained about Beckham's service. The Dutchman grew frustrated that the ball was not coming into the corridor of uncertainty with the frequency or speed he demanded. This tactical dissonance created visible friction on the pitch. Van Nistelrooy was known for his demonstrative body language, throwing his arms up or shouting when a pass was delayed. This public display of frustration undermined Beckham and signalled to the management that the two-star assets were no longer compatible. The situation reached breaking point during the Champions League quarter-final against Real Madrid in April 2003. Ferguson dropped Beckham to the bench for the second leg at Old Trafford. Van Nistelrooy had scored 44 goals in the 2002-03 season. He was indispensable. Beckham, with his media baggage and tactical drift, became expendable. Ferguson chose the striker over the winger. Number 2. Roy Keane, the ideological enforcer who despised what Beckham had become. If Sheringham's conflict with Beckham was professional, Keane's was deeply ideological. As captain of Manchester United and the physical embodiment of Ferguson's will on the pitch, Keane viewed the dressing room as a sacred space of collective sacrifice. The conflict between Keane and Beckham was a collision between two eras of football, the Spartan, working-class ethic of the 1990s versus the commercial, individualistic, galactico culture of the 2000s. Keane's leadership style was predicated on fear and standards. He demanded total immersion in the game. Any distraction was a betrayal of the team. In the early years, Keane was a protector, famously defending the young winger against opposition aggressors. But as Beckham's fame began to transcend the sport, fueled by his marriage to Victoria Adams and his increasing portfolio of endorsements, Keane's protection turned to frustration. Ferguson wrote that Beckham surrendered himself to fame, and Keane, who despised the trappings of wealth when they interfered with performance, became the enforcement arm of this dissatisfaction. Keane famously criticised the Rolex culture, the obsession with mansions and cars, a critique that squarely targeted the lifestyle Beckham epitomised. Friction intensified as Beckham's circus began to intrude on the daily operations of the club. Ferguson noted that Beckham's application levels dropped in his final season. Keane's general attitude towards players who thought they were bigger than the manager echoed this sentiment. The notorious unaired MUTV interview in 2005, after Beckham had left, where Keane tore into his teammates following a defeat to Middlesbrough, is critical to understanding Keane's mindset. Keane attacked the drop in standards and the complacency of younger players who believed they had made it before winning anything. Keane's rage was cumulative. He had watched the culture of the dressing room drift from the asceticism of the mid-90s to the celebrity culture of the mid-2000s. Beckham was patient zero of this infection. Interestingly, the relationship between Keane and Beckham has softened significantly in retirement. When Ferguson released his autobiography attacking Beckham, Keane was one of the few to publicly rebuke the manager, stating, "I don't think he knows the meaning of the word loyalty." While Keane found Beckham's lifestyle frustrating during their playing days, his hatred was reserved for the drop in standards, not the man himself. Number 1. Teddy Sheringham. The professional Cold War that defined dysfunction. The relationship between Beckham and Sheringham stands as one of the most intriguing paradoxes in Premier League history. On the pitch, they were integral components of the treble-winning side of 1999. Their interplay was characterized by intuitive understanding and technical synergy. Off the pitch, they existed in a state of mutual non-existence. A Cold War defined not by explosive arguments, but by a frosty, impenetrable silence. Sheringham arrived at Manchester United in 1997 as a seasoned professional, striker renowned for his intelligence, independence, and a somewhat detached demeanour. Unlike the class of '92, who had grown up under Ferguson's paternalistic rule, Sheringham was a formed character with his own ideas and a distinct lack of deference to the emerging hierarchy of the dressing room. The friction with Beckham was rooted in a fundamental personality mismatch. Sheringham was old school, social, fond of a drink, but intensely private regarding his professional conduct. Beckham was the vanguard of the new era, media-savvy, image-conscious, increasingly surrounded by an entourage. Reports from the era suggest Sheringham viewed the Becks phenomenon with skepticism, seeing the burgeoning celebrity lifestyle as distinct from the job of winning football matches. While they shared the pitch for 4 years, they barely exchanged a word outside of professional necessity. Sheringham refused to bow to the superstar status that Beckham was acquiring, leading to palpable tension over authority on the pitch. The most verified instance of this power struggle occurred on October 6, 2001, during the critical World Cup qualifier against Greece at Old Trafford. This match is enshrined in English football folklore for Beckham's last-minute free-kick equaliser. But the moments preceding that goal reveal the depth of the tension between the captain and the veteran striker. The context was dire. England trailed 2-1 in stoppage time and needed a draw to qualify automatically for the 2002 World Cup. Throughout the match, Beckham had assumed total responsibility for set pieces. His conversion rate on the day had been poor. Several efforts had flown high and wide. When England won a free kick approximately 30 yards from goal in the dying seconds, Sheringham, who had been introduced as a substitute, asserted his seniority. According to Sheringham's own account, he approached Beckham to take the kick. "I went over and said, 'Becks, let me have it.' He said, 'You can't even reach from here. Go get in the wall.'" This exchange demonstrates Sheringham's lack of deference. Despite Beckham being the captain and the designated set-piece specialist, Sheringham felt empowered to challenge him based on performance. Beckham's dismissal, "You can't even reach from here," was a brutal put-down, asserting his physical superiority and technical dominance in a moment of extreme pressure. Sheringham retreated to the defensive wall, watching as Beckham curled the ball into the top corner. The Greece incident encapsulates the Beckham-Sheringham dynamic perfectly. A struggle for territory and authority resolved only by undeniable talent. Sheringham later acknowledged that despite the friction, he knew Beckham was the right man for the moment because you saw him practicing every day for that moment. The Cold War was underpinned by a begrudging professional respect. Sheringham might have disliked the circus, he might have resented the monopoly Beckham held over the team's aesthetics, but he respected the work ethic. All these threads of conflict converged on February 15, 2003, in the home dressing room at Old Trafford. Following an FA Cup defeat to Arsenal, Ferguson entered the dressing room in a rage. He singled out Beckham for failing to track back on Sylvain Wiltord's goal. When Beckham swore at Ferguson, the manager kicked a pile of clothes on the floor. A boot flew from the pile and struck Beckham above the left eye, opening a cut that required stitches. The reaction of the teammates is telling. Beckham was restrained not just by his friends, but by Ruud Van Nistelrooy, the very man who had complained about him. This moment symbolized the total breakdown of the relationship. The collective had turned on the individual. Ferguson utilised these dressing room tensions to justify the sale of Beckham to Real Madrid later that year. The claim that 7 footballers hated David Beckham is a dramatic simplification of a complex, high-performance environment. These conflicts were symptoms of a club in transition. Beckham was the first modern footballer, and Manchester United, under the strict authoritarianism of Alex Ferguson, was not yet ready to accommodate a brand that rivaled the club itself. The hate was merely the sound of the old world colliding with the new. But here's the thing, Beckham survived it all. The red card, the death threats, the cold shoulders, the flying boot. He walked into Real Madrid and became a Galactico. He conquered America. He built an empire. The pressure that was meant to break him only made him sharper. If you made it this far, smash that like button, subscribe for more deep dives into football's untold stories, and drop a comment telling me which of these 7 shocked you the most. Cheers.